Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainable Food Places Campaign's Breakfast. My name is Sofia Parent. I'm head of local action for those who don't know me. I'm a member of the Sustainable Food Places team. And this morning, we're going to hear from two places who organized food trails this summer. So food trails to showcase the best of local producers and farmers, farming and producing in an agroecological way. We're going to hear from Louise Denham from Vale of Glamorgan and Daphne Ducrot from Shropshire. They will talk us through what they've done, their food trails, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. So feel free to start posting your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them after they finish their presentations. So I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, if that's okay. So Louise, do you want to go first? Thank you.
Hi everyone. Good morning. I'm Louise. I'm from Food Vale, which is the Sustainable Food Partnership in the Vale of Glamorgan. And a big apology because I have lost my voice. Over the weekend, it just kind of completely disappeared. I didn't talk at all yesterday, which was really, really hard. But this morning it's slowly coming back. If it does go when I'm talking, I'm very grateful to my colleague Kat here, who is going to help me talk or help us kind of carry on the presentation. But yeah, we also have Alec in the call as well, who's been a big part of the Vale Food Trail. So yeah, nice to meet you, everyone.
Hi, I'm Daphne from the Shropshire Good Food Partnership. So I am one of the founding directors as well as the coordinator for the partnership. So we've been around for 2 years, and I come to this with a background in food policy and as a food producer. So we've been able to do our first year of the food trail, which has been a great success, and I look forward to telling you about it.
Thank you very much. Louise, do you want to go first and tell us all about the food trail in Vale of Glamorgan? Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Excuse me. Okay. Let me just get to the beginning. Okay, so I'll crack on. If I become completely inaudible, just shout and I'll pass over to Kat, but it seems like so far so good, so touch wood, it'll be okay. So yeah, here to talk about the Vale Food Trail, which we organised for the first time this year. Took part between the dates of 9th to the 18th of June last month, so like a 10-day trail. This is the logo. So when we first kind of put together the idea for a trail, we wanted it to be like a 10-day trail, which was going to do these 3 things. So showcasing local climate and nature friendly food producers in the Vale and the businesses that support them. We wanted to embed this as an annual event as well. So hopefully this is something that we'll do again next year. There's lots of learning, which I'll talk about later, that we can kind of draw upon. And we wanted to encourage kind of the local citizens and visitors to connect with some of the local food producers, because we've got some really good kind of food businesses in the Vale, but there's, I think, as a lot of other places as well, they kind of sometimes aren't celebrated as much as they ought to be. So we really wanted to kind of connect people with those businesses and encourage that to be a platform for learning as well about the connections between food and well-being and climate change. So we were very lucky to gain funding from the Sustainable Food Places Good Food Economy grant, which supported this trail. And we also topped it up as well with a little bit of money from the National Lottery's Awards for All grant as well. So yes, we had a good pocket of funding to kind of pilot this trail for the first time. And I'm saying we very much worked in partnership with a few key organisations across the Vale. We formed a bit of a kind of like a working group for the delivery of it as well, who from the very beginning kind of helped shape the idea, the concept of the trail from the beginning, and kind of decide, you know, some of the key points as well that we'd cover. So between us, so it was the Food Vale partnership, which is the partnership that I coordinate, and we're based within the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board. We also had some really great support from the admin team within the University Health Board as well. We had support from COWINE, which is an initiative from an organisation called Mentor a Business, who supports Welsh food and drink producers, sorry. And also some of the departments from the council. So from the tourism department, we had some support from the community regeneration team. That's Alex's team who's in this call, business regeneration team, and the strategy and partnership team as well. And we also brought in some external support from an independent PR consultant, which was really helpful in us kind of like raising awareness of it, getting it out in the media and this kind of thing as well, because obviously starting from scratch, you know, you're starting from no branding, no followers on social media and all this kind of thing. So it's really important for us to build a really good kind of brand and presence. So yeah, so as I said, so we as a group, we kind of met at the very beginning and kind of agreed some of the key points of the trail. And we were very much inspired by the trail that took place in Somerset. I think the final one took place last year, but I know they piloted it a few years before, maybe 2019 pre-pandemic. So yeah, we were very grateful to kind of have them share their learning on what worked in their area and this kind of thing, for us to kind of draw some learning on. So we knew that we wanted it to be like a series of different activities run by the businesses themselves, so that they'd put the activities on at their premises or their site sort of thing. We were hoping to kind of group the activities according to the geographic location as well. So there's the Vale of Glamorgan is quite a spread out county, it's quite a lot of rural areas, but then pockets of, you know, populations according to the different towns, and that's, we're grouping them according to those pockets of people. And then those clusters would happen around the same time. So we kind of assigned different weekends, different clusters, like a weekend to use. We wanted the visitors to travel between the activities independently. We were kind of hoping to be able to promote more of like active travel, so walking and cycling within reason, public transport and this kind of thing. We also, alongside the activities being run by the businesses at the businesses' premises, we wanted to run our own kind of wellbeing sessions, organised separately by us as a team, to link in with the PSB, which is the Public Service Board's wellbeing plan, which is the local plan for how we're going to meet the requirements under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, as well as then aligning it with the council's Project Zero climate challenge plan. So looking at some of their kind of carbon kind of aims and this kind of thing as well. And another thing we aimed alongside this was a producer buyer networking breakfast that was organised by COWINE, and this was really an opportunity for producers in the Vale and local buyers from hospitality and other places to kind of meet producers, to showcase their produce and kind of form new connections, sort of thing. We knew that we wanted it to be aimed at both kind of people living in the Vale as well as people visiting the Vale. And we knew the dates, or we set on the dates eventually as running between the 9th and the 18th of June, because that would cover then 2 weekends and also coincide with Open Farm Day, which in the end wasn't as relevant, but nevertheless was, I think, a good time of year in terms of matching it with when a lot of the kind of farmers and this kind of thing have a bit more time to do these, you know, to invest in something like this. And then a few of the things that we knew that we wanted to be a part of the trail as well was, we knew we wanted kind of a website that we could direct people to. We wanted to be able to have dedicated social media channels that we'd set up, physical brochures that would be printed and distributed, and press releases as well that would be sent out. So this is a rough timeline, and full disclosure, this isn't the original timeline that we'd set up at the very beginning. It did change a bit as we went along. Things are delayed, things take longer than you think, but within reason, we'd kind of built that into the plan as well. So hopefully nothing was like running so out of time that it kind of ruined the trail overall. But yeah, so we kind of began the work back in January when we kind of came together as a team and started thinking about some of the action plan and which businesses we'd want to reach out to. Sent out a sign-up form, or like an expression of interest form, to businesses in February. And then straight away started kind of looking at the logo and website, because we knew that as soon as we're announcing it publicly, we need to have those things in place. We need to have the website as a landing page, and the logo to kind of show people what it is and have a bit more of a visual around it. April and May kind of putting out some of the press releases. So the first one was a press release just announcing the trail, that it was going to be coming. And then the later press release in May was one that when we'd had the program was actually finalized and we could properly promote it, and all the links were live, people could start booking onto it and everything. And then had the brochures printed, and then the trail took place. So that's kind of a rough overview of the kind of timeline of how we went about it. As I mentioned, the website was one of the key things that we needed to kind of get in place quite early on. So we developed this website, valefoodtrail.com. It was all translated, so you could just press a toggle at the top to translate it into Welsh. So, and that was really important for the trail, that everything that was produced and all of our communications on social media must have been available in Welsh as in English, which was really good in terms of like improving the accessibility of the trail, I think, to everyone. Obviously then it puts additional kind of layers onto the challenges of allocating adequate budget for the translations, and you're not as able to do kind of communications on the fly because you have to get it properly translated, and unfortunately I'm not fluent in Welsh. I'm learning, but it's not fluent. On the website we had the four key kind of web pages. So we had the home page, which had the basic overview of the trail, the events page, which had the listings. We had an interactive map, which you could click on to find out more about the different locations. And we had a news page as well, where we could put all of the press releases. We also had an additional page, which is a resources page, which we didn't list because this was specifically just for the businesses. And it was a place where we could upload materials such as the photographs. We had some videos that we took that they could use. We had some social media content, feedback forms, risk assessments and things like that. So that was an unlisted page that was just for the businesses themselves. And then for the social media, we managed to kind of set up a nice consistent handle across all of the social media. So it was all at Vale Food Trail. So we had an Instagram page, Facebook and Twitter. And it was the first time that as a partnership we dealt with Instagram, so that was really helpful as a learning curve. And like I said, kind of like building the audience from scratch was a real challenge, and it was really necessary for us to kind of make sure we were getting really good content up, really like tantalizing kind of snippets of videos and photos and this kind of thing, and then also encouraging that all of the working group, the team that were leading on the trail as well, making sure that they were sharing from their platforms so that it was being amplified wider. So those were our social media channels. This is a little one of the kind of trailer videos that we had before we had any kind of announcements of the final program or anything. We wanted to release some kind of teaser trailers and this kind of thing. So this is one of them, which will hopefully the sound will be all right. We did test it before, but do put your hands up if you can't hear anything or if it's not working for you. And this is the English version. So again, this was produced with kind of Welsh text as well. Right. So that was the trailer that went out, and so all of these things that were going out, we were then kind of linking to the website and just saying, go to the website. There was a place where you could sign up for the newsletter for when the program was announced. So we were really trying to encourage people to kind of come back and know where to come back to for that information before it was available. I didn't mention about the logo as well. So that was also something that we'd designed right at the beginning, and obviously some in Wales people do logos differently. They might have an English version and a Welsh version, but we thought it was very nice to have the two together and kind of consolidate it a bit. And we had different versions prepared. So there was this one that was good for kind of overlaying on an image as with a kind of just a white logo, and then we had the colour version as well. Yeah, so I thought those videos seemed to work really well and got a lot of engagement online. I particularly liked the llama with the underbite, it was really nice. No. How do I move to the next? Okay, so in terms of the activities themselves, we had a really nice spread of different types of activities. So we had things like a lot of tasting activities where businesses might say like, come and try this new product or this kind of thing. So it was less, I suppose, of a time and place thing, and it might be just that they open up for a duration during the trail and people can stop by. There was also within Barry, the town of Barry, they organised a mini kind of taster tour where they engaged, I think, about 12 businesses in that as well, which was really good because a lot of those businesses are quite new as well. So it kind of showcased them. We had a lot of tours as well. So tours on kind of different sites. They might be kind of organic farms. We had some on smaller horticultural projects, market gardens, this kind of thing. Quite a few vineyards, which worked really well because it happened to coincide with Welsh Wine Week, which was taking place. So they were able to kind of amplify some of the activities within the trail. And we had a tour as well within Peterston Tea, which is a really interesting tea estate, the only tea estate in the UK to be producing tea, and they're making their own kombucha and doing agroforestry and really interesting stuff. We had exhibitions, markets, like mini festival kind of things that would happen in some of the smaller towns. Some of the places were putting on special menus or doing talks and this kind of thing. And there was also a range of prices. So some of them were free, or some of them were very kind of like a couple of pounds to a £5. There were a few that were kind of much more on the kind of boutique side, you know, upwards of like £35–40. And we're still kind of looking at some of those and trying to work out to what extent that works as an activity, or whether it's, you know, whether it would be good to have something running alongside at least at the same site that was a little bit more affordable maybe. But there were some limits in that in terms of the business's capacity to run more than one event, and maybe it was an event that or like an activity that they run anyway as a, you know, they are already like a visitor facing organization or business and already have received visitors for this specific activity. So so there were, you know, I think some things that we'll be able to learn from for that. And these are some of the spreads from the brochure that we had made, which can show you a little bit more about some of the activities. So we'd kind of hoped the brochure would be able to have a bit more visuals, some more of the photos that we'd had taken, because alongside the video that I showed you a minute ago, we did the videographer and photographer, he went out and took some really good photos, really nice headshots of some of the producers, which was really nice to kind of, you know, we were really framing them, as you can see on the screen, as like, you know, meet your local food heroes sort of thing. But yeah, it was so we had some really nice visuals that we used a lot over social media, but we weren't able to feature them as much in the brochure as we wanted, just out of capacity. Like we'd kind of allocated a budget for the brochure, and it was kind of like we had a few more businesses than we thought, and then once we factored in kind of the Welsh translation, which was kind of done on the other side, so it was one of these brochures that you kind of flip and turn around, and then the Welsh is on one side, the English is on the other side. So yeah, so that was a bit of a challenge, and I think there's a few learnings for us around the brochure in particular that we'd like to kind of develop for next year. But overall, I think the brochure looks really good, had some really nice graphics, and did still have some features and nice descriptions of the activities. We had a few little bits as well where there was just a photo and maybe a fact about food in the Vale of Glamorgan, about the sustainability of it, you know, the health of food and this kind of thing as well, to just try and get some of those messages in there again. Yeah, we had 2,000 copies printed, and they were kind of distributed across the whole of the Vale, so to most of the participating businesses, as long as they had somewhere to put them, and then to key sites as well, so leisure centres and kind of tourist bureaus and this kind of thing as well. As I mentioned, alongside the kind of business run activities, we had the 2 activities that we'd organised ourselves as the kind of organisational team. So we had the wellbeing session, which we called Food, People and Planet. And this was kind of like a drop-in afternoon where people could come along, talk to some of the different businesses, organisations that were going to be present there about a range of different issues. We had good representation from organisations. We had the Vale Waste team who could talk about some of they'd had some recent changes to their food recycling scheme and some of the other recycling. So that was really good to have them there. We had Wirdio Penarth Greening, who's a local kind of community action group trying to get Penarth to be more green, more resilient as a town. We had Penarth Growing Community, which is a community growing project. Project Zero, which I'd mentioned before as the council's climate challenge team. So they've got a plan out and they were kind of raising awareness of some of the actions that they're doing as part of that. Benthyg, which is like a Wales a Welsh organisation for like the Library of Things concept. So Benthyg in Welsh means borrow. So they were there raising awareness of, you know, cookery and gardening equipment that they might have available for people to use. Plastic Free Penarth, who obviously have different aims for kind of reducing single-use plastic in Penarth. Food Vale, the food partnership, and we also had the local dietetic team who were there doing demonstrations around kind of healthy cooking on a budget. So they bought some kind of food and people could come and choose what they wanted to have made and then take that away with them. So yeah, that was the Food, People and Planet. And then we had the Producer Buyer Networking Breakfast run by Cowine. And this was went really well. So we had, I think, about 12 different producers join, and they were there kind of, yeah, showcasing their wares. We had I think we had 2 buyers join. There were a few more that were supposed to join that didn't in the end, but they came along and there were some really good kind of outcomes from that in terms of just connections made and, you know, potentially getting local produce on in local shops as well, locally, you know, local plates, I think. And then in terms of at the media, so as I said, we engaged with a local PR consultant, independent PR consultant, which really helped us kind of getting this in the media. So we had it in a lot of different local media. We were in, you know, local radio, a lot of the kind of different news articles and that across the Vale. We featured in BBC Radio Wales as well, talking about the Vale Food Trail, which was in Welsh. And I was very grateful to Nia Morn, who was part of our team. And she was there able to talk in Welsh about the trail. And we also had Visit Wales, which is the tourism board for Wales, join some of the activities, and they produced some really good social media content. And probably the best kind of thing from our perspective was that we were featured in Wicked Leaks, which is the kind of media outlet for Riverford Organic. And they did some really nice articles and social media content as well about the trail, which was really lovely. And I know a lot of the businesses were really chuffed about getting in that magazine. We very nearly got on some of the more kind of mainstream kind of media outlets in Wales as well. There's one called Wales Online, which they were kind of umming and ahhing for quite a while, and it was a bit of a shame that in the end they chose not to kind of feature us on their website. I think I don't know if it was maybe, you know, they do a lot of food stuff, but maybe it was the fact they were calling it sustainable, healthy food. Maybe they didn't think that was sexy enough. I'm not really sure, but yeah, something maybe that we'd be able to try again for next year. And so as part of the trail, we sent out feedback forms to the businesses and to the participants. We're still chasing the businesses for for responses to those forms, but so far, kind of the numbers that we have is that there were over 30 businesses that participated, and that's excluding a lot of the businesses that were kind of part of these kind of mini festivals and things like that. So I think realistically it's possibly nearer the 40-50 mark, but I think 30 that were directly involved in, like, you know, running their own activity and were like more actively a part of the trail. Again, we had over 500 participants, and this is really hard to gauge because we're still chasing the businesses, and there will be businesses that aren't, you know, that won't get back to us about this. So but I think we're really happy with the kind of level of participation for that, and that's excluding the activities again where there were numbers that were hard to attribute to the trail directly. So things where there were mini festivals and there were markets that happened maybe, you know, regularly anyway, where we weren't counting those numbers, because I think that would possibly distort kind of the people that were actively engaged with the trail because they knew it was part of a trail sort of thing. And from the people that responded to the feedback form, the participant feedback form, 70% of these people were from the Vale. We had pretty good engagement over social media. Again, really challenging building that from scratch, but we've ended up with, last count a few weeks ago, 282 followers on Instagram, 82 on Twitter, and 202 on Facebook, which is kind of aligns with, Twitter was, I think on Twitter, our audience was more of the actual businesses that were taking part rather than participants themselves. So that kind of, I think, explains why that was a bit lower. But yeah, overall very happy with that, I think. And again, something that now that we've got this all in place, it'll be much easier for next year to kind of add on to that as well, build that. Excuse me. So yeah, as I mentioned, we had the participant feedback form as well. So had 17 people complete the survey, which isn't amazing. We did offer hampers as rewards to try and bribe people to fill it out. And yeah, so not loads. It's not going to be reflective, I think, of the overall experience, but definitely will illustrate, I think, some of the key points, which was really good. So 71% of people had seen the brochure, picked up a brochure. Most people found out about the trail, though, through social media or word of mouth. Not many people through the brochure itself. And most people attended activities with family or with a partner, which is really nice, I think, to think, really helpful for us as well to think about activities for next year. Would we try and make more that are explicitly like family friendly and this kind of thing as well. We also, to kind of get a bit more of a feeling about, whether people were coming back with better learning about kind of its sustainability issues and that, we had a few kind of statements where we were kind of saying, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 5, to what extent do you strongly disagree or strongly agree with this statement? So we had, let me just move my dialogue box. So yeah, 71% agreed or strongly agreed that they felt more connected with local food businesses. 76% agreed or strongly agreed that they'd learned something new about healthy and sustainable food and farming. And 41% agreed or strongly agreed that they had an improved understanding of the connections between food, health and sustainability. So overall, I think really good feedback from participants, and we've got some really good kind of suggestions for improvement as well, which I'll go over in a minute. And one thing that I will just say about the feedback as well is so the way that we put out the feedback form was through social media, which is where we kind of said, like, fill this out and you'll get a hamper. And we were really trying to kind of encourage people to fill it out that way. But we also, I think this is where we got most of the responses, was just through the businesses themselves. So before the businesses ran the activities, we sent them their feedback forms in digital, like a link, a paper copy, copies that they could print. And also, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's almost 10:30.
That's okay. I'll finish.
You want to cover like learnings, next steps. If you wrap up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. Sorry, I didn't realize it was so long.
Questions coming up. Thank you.
Okay. So it was slightly distorted was my main point with that one. What went well? So yeah, really good press coverage. Businesses reported greater visibility in the community, opportunity to test new ideas and being part of a wider network. As I mentioned, coincided with Welsh Wine Week. There were new connections with customers, and generally most businesses would like to participate again next year. When we had a few nice kind of quotes there from some of the businesses that had taken part, and where they've got some really, kind of tangible things that they're going to be able to follow up with now, and connecting with new buyers and this kind of thing, which is really, really what we wanted to see. Some of the challenges, everything took longer than expected. Chasing up information was really challenging from the businesses, and at the same time, we're really appreciating that they're under a lot of pressure running their businesses, often with limited staff at the moment. So it was quite difficult for us to kind of get confirmation of when they'd like to do it, what the cost was, what the booking links were, all in time for us to put it in the brochure and get that out in time. We had some challenges around the budget, so some of the design costs were higher than we'd originally been quoted. So in some instances, some of the work had to be kind of absorbed into other places. So in particular, the translation work, some of our key partners took that on as a cost instead. The brochures were quite late being distributed, which was unfortunate because we had them already, and then the organisation that was responsible for printing and distributing was just really hard to communicate with and get kind of confirmation from. Some activities were quiet, which is understandable as the first time running, and questions around the dates. And I think one of the things was that very difficult to get public engagement in the Food, People and Planet event, despite having really good kind of representation from businesses, just, yeah, very little public engagement, which was something to kind of think about more for next year, I think. So yeah, some of the key learning for next year, because of the challenges around chasing businesses for the information, I think we'd probably just like go with one form at the beginning with a really hard deadline and say, like, you need to have like all of the information developed in, in quite a lot of detail to get back to us, rather than us kind of with this back and forth getting back to them, because ultimately that makes it more work for them as well if they're constantly having to reply to emails. So yes, that's something that we definitely do. We might choose not to do brochures next year, just on the basis of it takes a lot of budget, and thinking about trying to secure funding for next year, whether we'd rather prioritize, something like posters over brochures. And we'd also not choose to do clusters. It didn't work too well in the Vale because there wasn't as many, because this was a thing that we'd learned from the Somerset Food Trail, but they'd obviously had a lot more businesses participate in their food trail than we did. So it's something that we might categorize differently. So maybe categorize the activities according to what type of activity rather than where they are. Less click-throughs on the website, include an FAQ section, lean into some of the celebration days. So it did coincide with Father's Day. So maybe next year, if that happened again, for example, we'd say the activity on that would be specifically for Father's Day. So like a tour of a vineyard, bring your dad sort of thing. Yeah, some of the other things are more just about like planning a bit earlier. So planning the Food, People and Planet event earlier, considering a slightly later date, so it's a bit further away from an existing food event, and dividing some of the tasks amongst the team more now that we know what the tasks are, having run it for the first time and having little experience in running an event like this. We can hopefully, kind of delegate them amongst ourselves a bit better. And that picture there is just of a small grant scheme that is available in Wales at the moment. So I'm kind of liaising with them at the moment to see if that's something that might work for our trail next year, to secure funding for doing this again and applying the learning. Yes, that's it. I apologize, I did go a bit over time there. I didn't really time myself. But yeah, any questions? And also anything to add from my colleagues to Alec or Kat, if you have anything that you want to add about the trail as well, please do feel free to chip in. My voice lasted, so.
I think just from our perspective, you've done a really good job, Louise, and you've taken a great lead in this. It's been really good, and showcasing the benefits of the Vale, and best of luck next year. We hope we'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely. And we've been very grateful for, support from the council and everything as well. So I think it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Yes.
There was a question.
There are questions in the chat, but I think they might be relevant for Shropshire as well. So before getting on to the questions, I suggest, Daphne, you do your presentation, because they might arise, or similar questions might arise after your presentation.
Sure thing. All right. Are you happy to begin sharing the file that I sent through, Sophia? All right. Thank you very much. If you wouldn't mind skimming back up to the top, that would be great. There we go. All right. So this is something that we've pulled together in the last couple of days. We only wrapped up the food trail last weekend. So the dates for ours were the 24th of June to the 9th of July. So I suppose the way that we approached it was we sort of did bookends. We started at the Shrewsbury Food Festival and used that really long established, well-known initiative as the launch. We've got good connections with the people who run it. So it's a really big event in our main city, Shrewsbury. So we got in there. So to give a little context on the food partnership, we're only 2 years old. So we've been growing quite a lot organically, but this has been an initiative that has really helped us to become visible, to build membership. So I'll come to that a little bit later. So by launching from the Shrewsbury Food Festival, we were able to get a lot of foot traffic and bring awareness to us as a partnership. But we were also in a tent with a number of our members. So we had a lot of representation from the organizations that are part of the partnership, as well as across the event. We had lots of food partners, farmers, producers, makers who were already a part of the partnership. So we were able to give them, we've got our lovely little booklet that we made. And so we had a huge distribution outlet across this amazing event with loads of footfall. So that is where we started with that. What that allowed us to do was begin projecting that message, hype it up alongside the Shrewsbury Food Festival social media. So we were able to partner in that. Again, a huge following in partnership with them. When we got to the food festival, we were a core team of about 4 on the first day, and that allowed our tamed marketing person to sort of go out and be the extrovert and talk to everybody about, hey, great, you're a food partnership member, you're on the food trail, this is the material you need, this is the blurb you need, and this is, you know, where we are, so you can refer people to our tent. And she was also able to go around to a bunch of the organizations that were there and say, why aren't you on the food trail? Why aren't you a food partnership member? And there was a little bit of a hype and recruitment around that as well. What we did from then, just fast forwarding, we closed it out at the Oswestry Food Festival a few weeks later. So it worked really well to cover different geographies and to utilize what was already there and was already well known. So we got a lot of hype around those. So coming to my slides, what was the trail? The idea was to build our good food movement. So we've of course had funding from the Good Food Economy grant, but also the Good Food Movement grant through the places. So I really wanted to couple this as an education and outreach initiative to promote good food across the county. We have so many amazing, the way we put it is growers, makers, sellers, and servers across the county. So we framed all of our events within those categories, as well as geographically. So we sort of broke the county up into 4 main zones. I'll come to that a little bit later. We wanted to boost the idea of good food. And so that allowed us to really push our message of good for people, place, and planet. And what we are doing as an organization, bringing organizations and people together who care about the idea of good food, as well as to bring together the food partnership and our message and our visibility. So for our first year, inspired by Somerset, actually our timeline follows quite closely to the Vales. I don't know that we have that in here. As I said, only threw this together a couple of days ago. So we had 56 venues across those 4 categories. We had specific events which linked really nicely with different things that were already going on. So part of that, as I open up my document here, which was a very useful reference. So we had the food festival, big launch. Hobson's Brewery was celebrating its 30-year anniversary. So they were having a big event, a big festival, big party. We used Steve the Hungry Guy, who is a really well-known local chef who works with our zero waste group, the Shrewsbury Food Hub. So he did a family-friendly cooking day. We have a People Planet Pint Social, which is an initiative you can register for. Our street allotment project, which we've been working with on the Right to Grow movement, had an open day. So there were loads of different things like that. And so that was, just a snapshot of some of the events, loads of maps distributed, and that is part of our legacy initiative as well. So that remains online, and it acts as a bit of a directory of the good food producers around the county. So that's a beautifully illustrated map, a really attractive way for people to connect with that. But with our website, the map will remain, and we will continue to add to our directory and have that crossover onto our main Good Food Partnership website. So we'll have a lot of that build up. The postcards were almost like an art piece that we included so people could collect those. And it gave information on what is good food and why good food in Shropshire County. So that allowed us just another conversation point and a physical thing that people could take away from the venues and from the festivals that we were involved with as we had those setups. Right. So our size and our county, Shropshire's fairly big. It's fairly spread out, combination of urban and rural, with Shrewsbury being our biggest city. So we brought together some of our most dynamic and reliable people from our experience within the partnership. So these are the firecrackers that we've gotten to know that have their hands in everything in their area. So we tasked them with their different zones to say, listen, we've got these members who are already a part of the partnership. Let's hit them up first, make sure that they are the first ones invited, because we want them to know that we value them. We want to boost them and really let people know that they're first movers on being involved with the partnership. But then each of these people who's really familiar with their area, we said, go forth, speak to the great producers, the places that you love, the places that you know, the places that you think would really want to be engaged. And they did, and with so much energy and pizzazz that we got so many people signing up. So our aim was 50. We got more than that, and that was with a bit of an even distribution across people that make, grow, sell, and serve in each zone. So these were our magic coordinators, and they did a wonderful job. They were tasked with following up with that area, the initiatives, the events. Do you need any support planning an event? Do you need any support making it a crossover event? For example, your open garden tour could be coupled with a chef that does the family-friendly cooking. So we were trying to make as many linkages as possible across our network. And they will also be getting the task of this week getting those surveys out and making sure that we get them back. So you won't see too much information about that in this presentation, simply because we haven't had a chance to do it yet. But these people were absolutely essential. One thing I should mention is that this is kind of a layered initiative. So as of today, we're launching the Shropshire Love Nature Festival, which is a more nature and an eco-focused trail across the county. So that's been running for 4 years as a separate initiative. So we have taken it on this year by virtue of having the link with our marketing person who had been involved. So those that were more food focused, who are partnership members, were part of the food trail, and we targeted them. Those that are more nature, connection, eco-focused are part of the Love Nature Trail. So we're taking different angles and also working with school holidays on things that are more family focused in the Love Nature Festival. So a lot going on there. So a lot of work, a lot of lead up and organizing. So what I wanted to get to was how we increased membership. So we marketed this as you can be on the food trail, but you become by default a member if you sign up. So that allowed us to increase our reach to a number of new producers, businesses. So that was hugely positive. So we've increased our membership by about 23 new members, lots of new subscribers to our newsletter. Part of that was because we did paid marketing on Instagram and Facebook. So we got a lot of scope on just how far our social media was reaching. And a lot of e-shots in our newsletter, a lot of press releases, and a lot of reach on in news media, online outlets, BBC Radio Shropshire. We have developed a podcast as a legacy initiative. So there has been quite a lot of media pushed out. Let's see, huge website engagement, lots of new social media followers. And this, didn't have time to screen cap this, but what we have been doing on our social media is doing a feature as a legacy of, well, throughout the food trail, but as a legacy as well, featuring all of our members. So there is a lot of material going out about specific producers, retailers, restaurants, cafes, etc., all in a specific format so that it's recognizable to people who are scrolling through. And it gives us a chance to do a bit more of a deep dive on why they're special, why they're unique in our area. And so that, as I speak about legacy over and over, it shows our members that we are really invested in them and boosting their signal and their values. And it shows that we as an organization are really in it for our members. So it's great to engage the public as part of the good food movement, and their individuals who we really want to get in. But it's about our membership and really supporting their business, their local food economy, and why they care about good food. So if we could roll on through the slides, that would be great. One thing that we are hugely proud of is that this created a lot of discussion with our local councillors and meetings with one of our local MPs, who is very, very supportive. It ties into some of our peripheral initiatives. So policy person, I took on doing a policy analysis of Shropshire County's main, like the Shropshire Plan, the Economic Plan, the Climate Action Plan, none of which include connections to food. It's largely absent. And for a rural county, that's a huge oversight. But what the visibility of the food trail did is they created a discussion point, a window, so that we could initiate those meetings and then say, this is our report to say, you need to do something more about food policy. We are here to support that. Our members are on board. Let us support the sort of leveling up of Shropshire's engagement with food. So we had some very positive meetings with our local politicians, who of course are in it for the local food economy, but it created that hook, which was really helpful. So we got in, it says Shrewsbury Market Hall, we had, which was voted the best market hall in England this past year. So that was wonderful. We could tour around there, do a lot of good media promotion, great visuals, and speak to our local producers and stall holders. So that has worked out really nicely, because they saw just how big a boost they got and said, we want to be way more involved next year as a market hall, which has its own marketing and promotions branch too. Visit Shropshire, of course, our local tourism board was really engaged. And the different organizations and climate teams in Telford and Reeking were really, really engaged, to the extent that we now have a partnership with them and part-time staff that work in their initiative, in their offices rather. So it has been, as I say, a huge window. So it has boosted our visibility, and through doing that, our legitimacy with a lot of key players across the county. So we can envision those partnerships becoming deeper, and we can engage with them more. So that's that slide done, I think. Right, I've gone over that sort of in passing. So just a little
Daphne,
bit.
Sorry to interrupt. I would like to leave 10 minutes for questions and answers. Do you think
Okay.
we can wrap up in 2 minutes?
Sure, I can. So let's see, where have we gone? Things that we would like to do differently. I think if we were to start earlier, knowing what we know now, very similar findings actually to what Louise said. Everything all in one place, one form, all the information we need. We go out to existing participants and say, would you like to come in next year? But this is something that we'll build up throughout the year, so that we can bring in participants, bring in new members and say, is this something that you want to participate in? Do you want to be on the Good Food Trail? Do you want to be on the Love Nature Festival? One, the other, both, great. We had zero sponsorship from outside organizations for this. So we really had to be mindful, particularly of print expenses, which were really significant. So we kind of had to, similarly to the Vale, move things around a little bit money-wise. Chasing up information was a bit of a frustration. I'd love to see more farms, because farms, of course, at this point in the year are so busy, and to ask them to shoehorn something else in is a big ask. But now that they see that it's a proven initiative, I think we'll have a lot more traction there. And I think one thing that we could do better in the legacy, or rather in the run of the event is say when particular things are open, because farms won't be open all the time. I think that would confuse people to think that they have the same opening hours, say, as a shop, and that they can just rock up at any time. One way to tick off a farmer is to do that. So we have to be very careful about communication about what's happening when. I'd like to see more specific events and crossover events that we have with our members. Feedback that we've gotten has been really good, specifically from retailers, actually, who feel that they've gotten a lot more footfall and a lot more engagement with the values behind their brand. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there, and maybe more stuff will come up during questions.
Thank you so much, Daphne and Louise, for all this rich detail. It's great. And I hear you about the pros and cons of doing these events close to other existing events in your places. I think we're a small enough meeting for people to just unmute and ask questions. Fariha, you had a question about budget and another question for Shropshire in particular about what does it mean to become a member of the Food Partnership? You want to unmute and ask?
Yeah, I was just wondering, one thing was whether you people had to pay to become a partner, and if so, how much they were willing to pay, because I'm trying to set up something similar in Lancaster. And also to the Vale, because you said you'd got funding for organising your food trail, just really look at how much realistically it would cost to put on an event like this.
Go ahead, Daphne.
Yeah, are you sure? Okay. We have not had, at this point, we haven't had any costs to become a member. What I think we have learned is that we need to really make our value proposition, our value add clear to the people who join us. A big part of that is knowing what's going on. So we have a newsletter, and it shows us how to connect the dots of the different people county. It's a way to amplify what they're doing through social media, shout outs for help, particularly for volunteer organizations, and ways that they may need support. It may be sharing resources. It may be saying we have funding initiatives that are available, research initiatives that you can participate in. And really our power is our knowledge of the networks and who's doing what across the county. And so people get in touch with us to ask all sorts of questions about where they can find this or who they can connect with. So we have been able to make stronger networks, to build projects, and that sort of, oh God, I hate the word synergy, but that. So we have been putting forward the value proposition, and to make that clear for businesses, charities, organizations. And so that sort of lives over in the values of what we started out with, our charter, to say, if you're signing up with the Food Partnership, it's because you believe in this. The food charter, as we've developed, has become a little less relevant because what we care about has become clear. We still have it as a reference point. So that's one aspect. We also open up membership to individuals, because we all know how powerful individuals can be with their groups and the community that they participate with. But that's more in line with the good food movement and the individual changes that we can make to empower ourselves, our neighborhoods, etc. So we've got those angles. That said, we want to bring in, of course, more members. So using the food trail as a tool to say, gosh, look at this great thing we've done. Look at how much visibility we brought to the county and who's doing what. That's a huge tick box. Coming back to the Shrewsbury Food Festival, when we set up there this year, we thought there are a lot of producers that we've never heard of. And sure enough, it's because they were from, everywhere else. They were, driving up with their food truck from London. They were from, loads of different counties. And so it wasn't, well, it was the Shrewsbury Food Festival. It wasn't a Shropshire Food Festival. So what we would like to do is use our momentum and say, how about we have, you know, a celebration alley of Shropshire good food producers that will then launch the food trail next year. So we can build up that presence and really show just how much we're doing for our membership. We have had discussions about how to monetize membership and if that's the right thing to do, or join for free as a member. But if you want marketing support, maybe you know, pay into tier 1 and that buys you, you know, X number of features on our social media and our website, and our next tier, maybe you engage with our marketing consultant. It's been in discussion. We haven't really come to anything. Truthfully, it's because we needed to get past the food trail to be able to think about our next wave of our campaign, which is our membership engagement. So watch this space.
Do you want to address the budget question, Louise?
Yeah, so I'll really quickly just say, so in terms of budget, we had about, I think it was like 9,500 in total. So that was including the Good Food Economy Grant, which was 7.5. And then we topped that up, as I mentioned, with just a bit of awards for all funding from the National Lottery, which, as I mentioned as well, was challenging to kind of stick to that budget. And there were things that we had to move around to kind of other, you know, absorb costs into other areas because, yeah, it went quickly and there were some things that were more expensive around the kind of like the design and development of the website and logo and that kind of thing. But it's reassuring then to think of things that we don't have to spend on next year, you know, which will make it a lot easier for us. But yeah, that was, but I can share more if that's helpful, a bit more of a breakdown.
And I think with all the local contacts and partnerships you developed, are you both confident that you can make this a part of the annual calendar in your places and look for funding elsewhere? Because a lot of it came from SFP funding this year, which will not be there next year. But is that the direction you want to take?
Yeah, for the Vale, definitely. That I think one of the best things to come out of it has been the connections, and that's not just our connections with the businesses, but between the businesses and between the businesses and the, you know, residents of the Vale and this kind of thing. So definitely want it to be, yeah, an annual thing, and think we can do it again next year.
Yeah, likewise. I think we really need to, now that we have had a proven track record, we can boost it out and talk about sponsorship in some more meaningful ways with specific businesses and the council. Visit Shropshire, for example. So absolutely. And we have had so much interest in it and people saying, you know, it would be great to see it go bigger. And, you know, I wasn't in it this year. Whoops, I missed the boat. I'd really love to be in it next year. So I think we're going to have a big group of members who are really sold on it this coming year.
Thank you. Leslie, you had a question about what type of producers farmers can participate. How do you define which ones are sustainable? If I asked the question correctly?
Yeah, I just kind of wondered if you had like a good food criteria and how people fit into that, because I live in an area where there's kind of limited producers and it would be nice to include everybody, but they're not all kind of sustainable or doing the good food thing. So I just wondered how easy it was for you guys to find these sustainable producers.
Yeah, I can say something about that quickly. So we did it kind of in two ways. First of all, like we didn't kind of do an open call for businesses to participate because it was a pilot and we knew it was, you know, we wanted to test it before we kind of do that. We really targeted the businesses directly ourselves. So businesses that we know are doing, you know, good things in terms of where they're getting the food from or their practices and this kind of thing. And then another way that we did it was that within the expression of interest form that we put together, we kind of had a very informal criteria of like, you know, what the trail is. Like, this is a trail about, you know, celebrating climate and nature friendly food. And then we kind of clearly said, what do we mean by that? And we kind of gave a few examples. And then there was a section in the form where we said, kind of, can you, in a few words, can you just kind of say what you're doing in this area? You know, what are you doing in terms of good food? And that was, you know, more, nothing that we're going to check up on, but just from their behalf, I think it's just a bit of a gesture to show that they are aware that this is about specifically, you know, climate and nature friendly food, not just any kind of, you know, like street food, you know, things and that kind of thing. So and it'll be interesting how we do that again next year, because obviously this year it was all quite incremental, and that was one of the challenges, because there was like a lot of back and forth. And so next year, if we want it to just be one form that people then send to us, and then that's it, they're part of the trail. I think that'll take a bit of thought in terms of how we still make sure, you know, when we're doing that open call, that we're getting businesses that are reflecting those values. Yeah.
Very similarly, actually, with the form, we had the same sort of approach. The way that we, as I sort of mentioned, as I was saying before, we approached our existing members first, people who have signed up, who agree with the principles of good food, who we've built relationships with. So it was our way of saying, we think you're great, we support you, you've been with us from the beginning. So, you know, let's make something interesting together. So we got a lot of initial sign up from that. We did put out a wider call from there, which funnily enough didn't get much traction. We got a couple of applicants from there, but of course, in a sense, it's self-selecting because they're following us because they believe in what we're doing. Finally, as I said, we had our coordinators go out and target places that they know and have relationships with because they're good. So it made it very simple for us. We didn't have to get into that messy judgment of, are you a good food producer? Do you have our values at heart? Do you have, you know, the right sentiment for the good for people, place, and planet? It was really straightforward. And actually, we didn't have anybody apply to be on the food trail or show up, register their interest at least, who we didn't bring onto the food trail. So everybody who applied was a part of it. That may be different next year as places hear about it and decide that they want to be a part of it because it's good for footfall and good for tourism. We may have to be a bit more discerning, and we recognize that. But I think having the track record that we do, it's fairly straightforward.
Great, thank you.
Thank you both very much for presenting about your trails, sticking up for questions. It was really inspiring, and really looking forward to see what you're going to do next year, and growing your movement in between now and then. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm going to close the meeting now. It's 3 minutes past 11.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.